We did not lose because they had better ships. We lost because 11 years ago, a scout filed a report, and we filed it under instrument drift. I wrote that report. My name is Ressa Vin, and for 11 years I was the only person in the assessment council who thought the numbers coming out of the third planet meant anything. I was wrong about one thing. I thought we had more time. The report itself was unremarkable to read. Population growth curve, technological adoption curve, 2 data points 3 years apart showing a rate of change that did not match any calibration model we had for a precontact species. I flagged it. I labeled it anomalous, recommend resurvey. High Assessor Talm read it, initialed it, and filed it under sensor recalibration, pending low priority, non-functional for future review only. I have read that filing note more times than I can count. It is 4 words long. It cost us a fleet. Talm was not cruel about it. That is the part I need you to understand before anything else. He smiled when he told me the council valued initiative, and that a career could survive one wrong instinct, and that I should spend less time on a low-priority planet and more time on my actual assignments. He had been dismissing junior scouts for 40 years with exactly that tone, and every one of them had eventually been wrong. I was the first one who wasn't, and by the time anyone admitted it, he had already signed the authorization for the demonstration fleet. I did not stop filing reports. That was the mistake everyone above me kept making, assuming that being ignored would make me quiet. It did not. It made me specific. Cade filed the second one. She was assigned to the orbital relay nearest the planet, and what she found was not a number. It was a pattern. Military doctrine on the third planet was being rewritten every 4 to 6 months, not every 4 to 6 years, which was the interval our models used for every comparable species at an equivalent developmental stage. She sat with that data for 2 days before she brought it to me because she did not trust herself to have found something real. She had been told twice that her instruments were miscalibrated. They were not. She had simply been assigned to watch a species that revised its own assumptions faster than we revised ours about them. Orsu filed the third, 4 months later, and his was the one that should have ended the argument. He was the one who noticed that the anomaly was not centered on any single nation-state, weapon system, or leadership structure, the way every prior first contact assessment assumed it would be. It was distributed. It was cultural. Independent teams on opposite sides of the planet, with no coordination between them, converged on the same solutions to the same problems within months of each other, as though the species itself were a single distributed intelligence that simply hadn't noticed it was solving things in parallel. He used the word improvisation in his report, and the council returned it to him with the word circled and a note asking him to use standard terminology. There was no standard terminology for what he was describing. That, too, was the point, and it was the point nobody wanted to sit with. Bellin filed the fourth, and hers was the one nobody could file under recalibration, because it was not a number, it was a recording, an unencrypted transmission between 2 human vessels, adjusting a rendezvous plan in real time after their original plan failed, without requesting new orders, without hesitation, in under 90 seconds. What struck me listening to it for the first time in Bellin's cramped relay office was not the speed. It was the tone. Neither voice sounded urgent. They sounded like 2 people rescheduling a meeting. Bellin played that recording for the subcommittee 3 times. Twice, the room was silent. The third time, someone asked her to summarize it in writing instead, because a written summary could be filed, and a recording of 2 calm voices solving a crisis in 90 seconds could not. 4 reports, 4 scouts, 1 filing note. I want to be precise about what we actually believed because it matters more than what we said. We did not believe humans were harmless. We believed humans were slow to organize, easy to overwhelm, and reliant on numbers we could outproduce in every category that mattered. Our models were 3 centuries old and had never once been wrong, across 41 prior first contact assessments. That was the actual evidence for the assessment, not the data in front of us, but the age and unbroken record of the model that had never needed to account for a species like this one. I understood even then why that record was hard to set aside. I did not understand until much later that it was the only evidence anyone was actually weighing. Then the council authorized the demonstration. It was not framed as war. Talm-Er's language was careful, the way it always was. A calibrated show of capability, intended to establish hierarchy before formal contact, minimizing long-term conflict through an early and unambiguous demonstration of relative strength. 9 vessels. No stated intention to destroy, only to demonstrate. I read the authorization twice, looking for the part where someone had asked the scouts who had actually been watching the planet whether a demonstration was the correct instrument for this particular species. There wasn't one. There was instead a line noting that 4 anomaly reports had been reviewed and factored into risk tolerance. Factored in meant read. It did not mean believed. I was not on the bridge for what happened next. I was in reassignment, 2 systems away, filing environmental survey data for a moon nobody cared about. Because that is what happens to an analyst who is right too early and insists on saying so more than once. I received the report the same way everyone else did, 6 hours after it was already over, compressed into a summary that took less time to read than the 4 reports that had predicted it. 9 vessels arrived in formation, broadcasting the standard demonstration protocol, full sensor transparency, weapons at standby, a show of restraint meant to be read as strength, exactly as it had been read by 41 prior species. 40 minutes later, 3 vessels held position, still transmitting the protocol exactly as designed. The other 6 did not respond to hails. The humans had not matched our formation. They had not matched our doctrine at all. They split into a configuration our tactical library had no entry for 3 pairs, each pair closing on a single target from 2 angles simultaneously. A maneuver that assumed a level of independent judgment in individual vessel crews that our own doctrine did not permit below flag rank. They closed distance on the 2 ships carrying our long-range arrays first, disabling them before those arrays completed a single targeting cycle. That was the tactic Orsu's report had almost named 11 months earlier, without knowing it. Distributed judgment, acting in parallel, converging on the same solution without a shared order to do so. Total engagement time, 4 minutes 11 seconds. Human losses. 1 interceptor, crew recovered by a second vessel that broke formation to retrieve them. A decision made and executed in under 30 seconds with no visible communication delay. Our losses. 6 vessels disabled, none destroyed, all recoverable. 3 vessels never engaged at all. The humans simply declined to fire on ships that had not moved from the standby formation. A decision our own tactical doctrine would not have made, because our doctrine did not distinguish between a demonstration and a threat until both had already been answered the same way. That detail that 6 ships were disabled and not destroyed, and 3 were left entirely untouched, was the second thing nobody in the Council had prepared for. Humans had fought exactly hard enough to stop us, in exactly the configuration that stopped us fastest, and then stopped, as if restraint were simply another calculation they had already run before the engagement began. The transmission came 8 hours later, addressed to the Assessment Council directly, not to Fleet Command, which was itself a detail Talm-Ur's office spent an unreasonable amount of time discussing. It was 30 seconds long. A single human officer, unhurried, reading a message that had clearly been drafted before the engagement ended. "We're returning your ships. We'd rather talk. Let us know when you're ready." No apology, no demand. No mention of the 4 reports that had already told us this was coming, because they had no way of knowing about those. That was the detail that undid me most, sitting alone in a reassignment office 2 systems away, reading the transcript a 3rd time. They had won without needing to know they were right. We had lost while holding the proof in a filing cabinet, initialed, dated, and closed. I was recalled 10 days later. Not reinstated, recalled, which is a smaller word, and Talm-Ur used it precisely. In the same tone he had used 11 years earlier to tell me a career could survive one wrong instinct. He did not apologize either, not directly. What he said, standing in the doorway of the reassignment office with my 4 buried reports open on a data slate in his hand, was that the Council valued initiative, and that 4 reports, taken as a set, constituted a body of work he wished he had reviewed differently. It was as close to the word wrong as I expect to hear from him. I was asked to write the revised threat assessment protocol, the one that would replace the 3-century model that had just cost us 6 ships, and more precisely, cost us the ability to walk into the next conversation from a position we had chosen rather than one we had been handed. I have Cade's report open on my desk as I write this. Orsu's is beside it, with improvisation no longer circled, and a second note beneath it in a different hand, asking him to expand the section. Bellin's recording plays in the background, the 90-second one, the one where two strangers decided together calmly not to wait for permission. The old model asked one question: how much force does a species have? I am building the new one around a different question, the one none of us thought to ask until it was demonstrated on 6 of our own ships, in 4 minutes and 11 seconds, by a crew that broke formation to save one of their own without being told to. Not how much force. How fast can they decide to use it, and how fast can they decide to stop? We have a meeting with their officer in 9 days. I intend to be in the room this time, and I intend to bring all 4 reports with me, not as evidence of who was right, but as the first 4 data points in a model that still has a great deal of catching up to do.